Today we're reasoning with Rachel Cargill, a writer, lecturer, and public academic.
A public academic? So, are there private academics? Academicing for money? Do what you want them to do? That's just some Tina Turner humor there. Don't mind me.
Rachel gained massive exposure when a photo of her at the Women's March went viral.
Viral, huh? Okay, well, I've never seen it before. I guess viral just doesn't mean what it used to. But, let's see, the sign reads, "If you don't fight for all women, you fight for no women." Huh. Well then, I wonder what our speaker would have to say about the Women's March in California earlier this year, which was canceled due to there being too many white women present. Were the organizers of that march thus heretics, according to that sign? I wonder.
It started a dialogue about who is included in the modern feminist movement.
So, wait. Prior to this photo, there had never previously been any discussions about whether the modern feminist movement was actively excluding people. Is that what I am to understand?
To her over 300,000 followers on Instagram, she's known as someone who doesn't shy away from tough conversations about womanhood, blackness, and racism.
When Feminism is White Supremacy in Heels, by Rachel Cargill. Huh, well, I guess I might have my answer to that California question.
Conversations that often make some people feel uncomfortable, and that's exactly what she's going for.
Ah, yes, the purveyor of the uncomfortable conversation, where one's discomfort is a sign of guilt over a thing rather than being put off by being accused of participating in a thing. I think that is what is known as the Salem method.
Rachel, you are a writer, academic, and activist with a huge following on social media. And that following is a group of people who have gravitated toward your anti-racism work.
Anti-racism work. Quote, "White women are constantly choosing their whiteness over their womanhood, and they're choosing to vote for people who will help maintain their white supremacy as opposed to what will help maintain the safety of women overall," unquote, says Rachel Cargill, an activist, writer, and lecturer whose work explores, quote, "the intersection of race and womanhood," unquote. Quote, "Cargill attended the rally in Washington, D.C., and carried a poster that said, quote, 'If you don't fight for all women, you fight for no women,' unquote. There, she says, she witnessed a parade for white women, not a protest. Although white women like Kamira Trent have stood up for women of color, they should not be hailed as heroes, according to Cargill. Quote, 'You're not a hero for being a basic human,' unquote, she says. Anti-racism. Got it.
So I want you to define what anti-racism work means.
Yeah, mostly anti-racism work centers around the term anti and looking at the racism that we experience in the world, what we see every day in our work, our businesses, our schools, and making the decision to be actively anti-racist instead of just saying, I'm not racist.
Actively anti-racist, not just saying, I'm not racist. So, someone who says they're not racist is then not anti-racist? Or is that just not proof enough for our speaker that someone says they aren't racist? They need to be assumed to behave and believe otherwise until they prove a negative to our speaker's satisfaction? Sorry, there I go, just trying to understand things again.
So I feel like it should be a given for just all people to not accept racism and to tried to incorporate anti-racism actions in their everyday life, but you've chosen to make this your career. When did you make that decision and why?
When she realized that there is a market for acceptable forms of racism? When she realized that victimhood was a marketable attribute? Oh, sorry, I should have said spoiler alert just then. My bad.
It was really interesting. It was after the Women's March in 2017. I had a photo that went viral. And when that photo went viral, my face and my feminism was kind of in front of a lot more eyes than it's ever been. And I was getting asked a lot of questions that I hadn't really thought of in depth. And a lot of it centered around my race and my womanhood.
Wait a second. People asked you about your race and womanhood, things you hadn't really thought about. Even though the sign you were holding up addresses being female, and implicitly, and by extension from the sign the other woman is holding, also addresses race. You hadn't thought about race and womanhood, even though 10 years earlier at the University of Toledo, you were part of the Black Student Union and volunteered in the campus's Women's Center. So, prior to your photo going viral, you had never thought about these things before. Got it.
And that's when I started doing my own work, my own research, and really discovering a lot of the racism that was within the feminist movement.
So, it wasn't until after a photo of you holding a sign complaining about racism in the feminist movement that you went out and discovered there was racism in the feminist movement. Got it.
And I realized, wait, if I wasn't fully aware of all of this, then there certainly are a ton of people who aren't aware. Most importantly, white women who were part of the harm that was happening to so many people of color.
Particularly white women who harm people of color.
Yeah, mostly anti-racism work centers around the term anti. Interestingly, after that photo went viral, I got a lot of white women followers, and I began to talk about how race intersects with our womanhood. So it kind of all just fell into place for me to begin learning as much as I could, teaching as I learned, and then people began to listen and learn along with me.
So, you leveraged viral fame about women being excluded from feminism for not being white into a career of calling white feminist women racist. Got it.
What are some of the ways in which you think white women are oppressing people of color without realizing it?
The most obvious thing that we saw was with the election, in which white women, with the demographics, they voted for Trump 53%. More than half of the white women in the country who decided to go vote voted for Trump. They made the decision to protect what Trump meant for their whiteness, knowing the harm that it would cause to every other demographic of women in the country, even themselves, honestly.
53% of white women voted for Trump. Therefore, if you see a white woman in America, it's about a 50-50 chance that she's racist, according to our speaker's logic.
Yeah, mostly anti-racism work centers around the term anti.
Got it.
Some white women do have their rationale for why they voted for Trump. For many, it's religious reasons. For many, it's, pro-life is something that they're very passionate about. One woman that I'm thinking in particular is a single mother who has a daughter with a medical condition. She voted for Trump because she thought that that would be the most beneficial thing for her family financially. And she wound up getting a healthy tax return. Is there a world in which those women get to vote on those interests?
Okay, credit where credit is due. That is an excellent rebuttal question from the interviewer. Up to this point, I had been seeing this as merely a softball piece. But regardless, good question. Now, let's see how our speaker responds.
For her to get to a space where she has the privilege of saying, well, I'm going to vote for this person knowing that other people will be hurt, but it will benefit me. That's a privilege that a lot of people don't have. Like, Black people couldn't even vote, for so much time. Not to say that she needs to ignore her needs, but White women need to recognize that the patriarchy, that racism, that white supremacy, all of this is to the detriment of everyone in the long run.
Wow. Just wow. Okay, let me try to unpack all of that. The ability for a white woman to make a choice as to who she votes for, especially if she believes that choice will benefit her and her family, even if it may not please or benefit everyone, that choice is a privilege. A privilege because long ago black people were not allowed to vote. And while she shouldn't ignore her own needs, as a white woman, she needs to recognize that because patriarchy. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So remember, everyone, women making their own decisions in order to improve their lives and situations is bad. Also, remember, feminism is for all women. Got it.
So your comment section, it can get pretty lit sometimes, and it can get pretty heated. And I have seen white women in there feeling like they're being villainized or feeling like they are being discriminated against.
I cannot possibly imagine why.
I always say if you have feelings about equality and justice, you should talk to your therapist about it.
Oh, what?
Like, we're not dealing with feelings, we're dealing with factual, historical situations that need to be rectified for literally the livelihood of people of color. Someone's fragility or someone's feelings around approaching a conversation about race is of no concern to me.
You're not concerned about people feeling vilified by you on the basis of their race. Got it.
It's interesting. White people are more frustrated about talking about race than the actual racism that's killing people in this country. Yeah, mostly anti-racism work centers around the term anti.
So you don't feel like in any of the conversations that we have about race today, you don't feel like white people are vilified at all?
There's a very villain-like reality to the ways that white people have continuously treated people of color. So if they feel like a villain based on the historical context of the role they play in race, then they can deal with that themselves.
So it's not that our speaker thinks white people are vilified, she just thinks that white people are justifiably vilified. Got it.
But it's very interesting that there's this deep desire to soften the historical context of the way white people have played into race. Yeah. But there wasn't that concern when those actual things have been happening over time.
So the white people of today need to be held to account for things that took place in the past, even if they had nothing to do with those things personally, but because they're white.
Yeah, mostly anti-racism work centers around the term anti.
Got it.
To that point, I often say in my anti-racism workshops that I do,
I think you need to take your workshops back to the drawing board.
I ask the white people in the audience, I say, tell me who you don't talk to about race and why. And I ask them to put the why down. And often I get a lot of response like it's painful, or I don't want to hurt my mother by bringing this up. I say, it's just discomfort. Unless your mother is going to stab you for bringing up how racist she is, then you're just uncomfortable. You're not in pain.
So, actual physical pain or injury is the only reasonable excuse not to confront a family member over anything you perceive as racist. Got it.
I have to encourage my white listeners not to make themselves the victim in a conversation about race. Like, why are white people now making themselves the victim just in conversation about race? We haven't even gotten to the action part yet.
Yes, because being demonized for one's skin color, and for no other reason, is nothing to feel victimized over. Got it.
You must be exhausted all the time. I'm tired after having this conversation. Woo, Lord.
Indeed. I can imagine that making hatred into a career and then being woefully unprepared to rationalize that hatred when it is challenged can be an exhausting endeavor.
How do you take care of yourself? I mean, you're educating all the time. Like, it doesn't stop because you're always posting and you're always informing and educating. How do you take care of yourself, Rachel?
Well, I can only hope that she can afford the occasional relaxation massage with the, at minimum, nearly $9,000 a month she's bringing in on Patreon.
If I were to see a first grade teacher who was with 30 first graders all day, I'd be like, you have to be exhausted. But that person would tell you, oh, it's just my work. It's what I do. It's what I studied for. Yeah. And so I feel the same way. This is my work. So I don't think I feel the burden that people think that I feel.
But I thought the intersection of your race and your womanhood created a consistent burden of oppression and marginalization. So you actually enjoy complaining? Huh. I never would have guessed.
And so I wake up ready to teach. I wake up ready to do research to see what I can bring to the table for conversation. But I also am really grateful for the ways that I have access and opportunity to rest in the way that I want and need to.
Yeah.
Well, I am glad to hear that she is coping so very, very well with having to spew hate every day just to get by.
Well, I am super grateful for this
I'm
conversation.
so happy.
I know this stuff is tough, and I know it's like very complex. So I just appreciate you like being willing to have this conversation with me.
I'm happy we got to have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, first off, many, many points to the interviewer for not making this a complete puff piece. Because, thankfully, her questions and challenges only help to underscore what is fairly obvious about our anti-racist activist, which is that she's a racist. However, she is the right kind of racist, the kind that can build a career of hateful rhetoric while wrapping it in a tough love or woke packaging to make the malicious medicine go down that much smoother. But hey, I do not begrudge her success. You strike while the iron is hot in life, and cheerleading people to hate others, or hate themselves, because of things they cannot change, well, that kind of business, unfortunately, never goes out of style. But hey, what do I know? I mean, I am white. But I'm not a white woman, so maybe I'm not that bad. As always, thank you for watching.